his mind about this. You, he's talking to Jesus Christ again, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Wow. What wonderful psalm that David can write of conversations in glory in which the Father installs his Son as the official king, and then he also installs him as priest. Nothing said anymore about this. Another 1,000 years goes by. Now we come to the writer of Hebrews. And in chapter 5, we saw how he repeatedly takes this idea from the Old Testament and tells us point blank that Christ is indeed a priest. He's not a Levitical priest. He's a priest after the order of Melchizedek. You remember those 6 or 7 statements we learned from Deuteronomy about God's priesthood? Let's run them through now with Christ and see if he fulfills this standard that was set in the Old Testament towards a priesthood. Our first point was that a priesthood was divinely appointed. Hebrews 5 and verse 4 tells us that he was divinely appointed, Christ, Jesus Christ, to be the priest. And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of God, as was Aaron. So also Messiah glorified not himself to be made a high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today have I begotten thee. And he saith in another place, Psalm 110, Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Jesus, the Messiah, the Anointed One, was divinely chosen by the Father to be priest. The second aspect we saw was it was the priesthood after the family of Levi. But here we see that he's a priest, a superior priesthood. He's going to be after the order of Melchizedek. Levi came from the heritage of Abraham. Abraham had a son Isaac. Isaac had a son Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. One of them was Levi, and the family of priests would come from them. But this one was greater than Abraham, Melchizedek. So the Melchizedek priesthood is greater than the Levitical priesthood. Look at the third thing we saw about a priest. He was service-orientated. Hebrews 8 tells us that the ministry of Christ is to be service-orientated. Hebrews 8:1, Now of the things which I have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister, a servant of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man. Look in 6 through 13. He talks about he hath obtained a more excellent ministry, service, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. And then he goes back to the Old Testament, to the book of Jeremiah, and he talks about the better covenant that was coming. Not written in stone, but written in a person's heart. And the Spirit of God living in a person, enabling them to love and obey God, was far better. And his ministry would be to serve people to enable them to do that. We also saw the priesthood was a representative ministry. They were representing the things to God and man to God. Look in Hebrews 5, verse 1, how he's going to represent. For every high priest taken from among men is ordained for men in things pertaining to God. And so he does. He carries out the will of his Father. He executes the plan of redemption. He sacrificed himself just as they planned in heaven. He does that. He ministers to God, but then he comes and he ministers to people. And through his work, he's able to rescue everyone that comes out of him. seeing that he ever liveth to make intercession for them. We also saw the priesthood was perpetual. Hebrews 6 in verse 20 tells us, whether the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus, made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. 7:17. A priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Verse 21. Forever after the order of Melchizedek. Aaron died. He was replaced by his son who died. He was replaced by his son who died. And the Old Testament just records the failures of the priest and their death, and the next one comes on. It's preparing us all that we would have a priest that could represent us accurately, could pay for our sin, and do it once and for all forever. And the priest has come. Jesus the Anointed. The priest was to be continual. 7:23 talks about that continual ministry. And they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death. But this man, because he continueth ever, hath an unchangeable priesthood. Wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. For such an high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needeth not daily, as those priests, to offer up sacrifice, first for his own sins, and then for the people's. For this he did once, when he offered up himself. The law maketh men high priests, which have infirmity, but the word of the oath, which was since the law, maketh the Son, who is consecrated forever. No chairs in the tabernacle, but in the scene in glory, there's a throne, and he's seated there at the right hand of his Father, making intercession for us. Well, what's a priest? Was Christ a priest? Oh, yes. He was the most wonderful priest. Well, what should our response be to Christ, the Anointed One, our priest? Well, our first response ought to be worship.